awesome team here at the Liberty Hall Academic Center. We have our curator and art professional, Mary Claire. If she can stand and wave, stand and wave. And we have our managing assistant director, Lauren Rodriguez, and our program coordinator, Jordan Williams. Oh, there he's in the back. She's so humble. Hello, Jordan. And we are here and a host of academic specialists and student workers who make this all happen. And we are so grateful that you come out to see the work that we do. We have some amazing speakers for you all tonight. We have our Nicholas P. I can't, sometimes I get mixed up on the last name. He's going to be our first speaker, and we have Anthony Marquez, who's going to be our second speaker. Nicholas is an awesome entity to the galleries. He was once an academic specialist, and he is a historian, and he's going to be our first speaker. So if you could give him a round of applause as he comes forward.
There we go. Hello, everybody. So tonight, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Fun fact, as I left the galleries of Kean earlier this year, this was actually my last exhibition that I was able to develop scripts for. So I was very, very, very excited to know that the gallery is going to invite me back to be a guest speaker here for the exhibition tonight. And I feel like when we talk about Hemingway and comics, and when we talk about specific galleries that have very historical based elements, especially because we're talking about Ernest Hemingway, obviously, it's good to have a very, I would say, a good knowledge of the exhibition beforehand. And I had made a presentation about the background of Ernest Hemingway. And it's going to be brief enough that you can know a little bit more about Ernest Hemingway, especially if you haven't really researched him before or if you're relearning him again. But it's also going to be boring enough that it's still a history presentation. I'm so sorry. But we're going to get right into it. All right, that works. Okay. All right, awesome. So I just want to start out by just introducing some few things, and this is what we're going to be talking about in the exhibition presentation. So from his birthday of July 21st, 1899 in Oak Park, Illinois, till his passing on July 2nd, 1961 in Ketchum, Idaho, Ernest Hemingway is widely regarded as one of America's greatest authors, and his works and his persona continue to captivate readers and creators alike across literature, across pop culture, across all different mediums, across all different landscapes. So tonight, we're going to be diving into the life and legacy of Ernest Hemingway. We're going to be exploring his early life. We're going to be talking about events, and more particularly wars, that have shaped his overall view, has shaped his overall literary persona, and we're going to be exploring a lot of his major works and the themes that he carries on in this exhibition. So, as you can see, I have some photos of Ernest Hemingway's mom and dad and little young Ernest right at the top right. So, as I mentioned before, his birthplace is actually where he grew up. Ernest grew up in Oak Park, Illinois, a place that he later described as people who have wide lawns and narrow minds. His parents, Grace and Clarence Hemingway, instilled a love of nature and the outdoors from a very early age, and they also instilled a very prominent work ethic that is mostly based in the Protestant religion. His father, Clarence, was a physician and often took young Ernest on fishing trips, hunting trips, and really fostered his appreciation for nature. Okay, all right. Well, while we get that going, I should talk about the next couple slides. So we're going to be going back to his early life right after high school. So after he graduated high school, he began his career as a reporter for the Kansas City Star. The newspaper's style guided and emphasized short, energetic sentences of various different verbs that he's come to use in his literary works, and he described it as vigorous English. And from that there on, those principles really stayed with him throughout his literary career. And then actually we're right over here to where I wanted to go, but I skipped a little bit too far ahead. So that's actually him in World War I and the Spanish Civil War. He served very different occupations during each of them. So by the time World War I reared around, he was way too young to enlist at the time, and so what he eventually did was became an ambulance driver in Italy. And from then on, this experience kind of shaped how reality could be harsh, can be cruel, because he was on the front lines, taking care of wounded, taking care of sick, and he kind of explored most of the horrors in literature in a lot of his different works. He actually got injured in World War I as he had injuries from shrapnel. And this period, like I said, influenced a lot of different works and really instilled the grittiness of war into some of his pieces, especially A Farewell to Arms, which we'll talk about later, briefly. See if I can go to the next slide. So for the Spanish Civil War, he, instead of being a medic and an ambulance driver, he was actually a journalist, really on the sidelines, but still in arm's reach of being involved in the war. He got to meet a lot of people. He got to meet soldiers on the front lines. He got to meet intellectuals. He got to experience war from a different perspective. He once looked at it in the view of a medic, and now he's looking at it in the view of a journalist. This kind of experience inspired from other stories, like For Whom the Bell Tolls, which, like I said, we'll also get to in a bit. Okay, so his literary style. Hemingway implied a sort of style that many people probably know as minimalism. Minimalism, in its shortest aspect, is taking something in a story, whether it be theme, motifs, and so on and so forth, and it'll sow the seeds of something that is going to be explored later on in the story. It's as if you're as if you're trying to introduce something, but not being incredibly overt about it. So that could be anything from love, loss, death, and the various other emotions that has been experienced throughout all of his works. And it really seems to be influencing what he later created, the iceberg theory. Go to the next slide. So the iceberg theory, many people have probably heard about it by now. It's being used across many different platforms. I mean, people on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube use this theory a lot. It's applied to many different mediums, but it originated with Hemingway. And the iceberg theory is something where the surface of what's being presented, the narrative, that conceals deeper layers of the meaning. And this is how he was able to introduce minimalism in a lot of his different works. In his own words, he said, if a writer of prose knows enough of what he is writing about, he may omit things that he knows, and the reader will have the feeling of those things. So he really wanted to create this to connect with his audience and build it from there. And then we're going to be talking about the next slide, which has to do with a lot of his different different works during this time. So I only really included a couple, but these are the ones that most know of Ernest Hemingway. These are some of this is some of the novels and stories that he's written that most people would know from him. So some of the most prominent ones are The Sun Also Rises. It was a novel that captured disillusionism, or illusionment, sorry, it's a bit of a tongue twister, of the lost generation post-World War I. It was set in Paris and Spain. It's a story of love, identity, and searching for meaning. A Farewell to Arms, which we mentioned briefly, is a semi-autobiographical novel about an American ambulance driver, if that rang any bells, in Italy during World War I. It's a heartbreaking exploration of love and futility of war. We also mentioned For Whom the Bell Tolls. Inspired by Hemingway's time in Spain, it's a gripping tale of a dynamiter on a mission during the Spanish Civil War. And it touches on different themes, especially sacrifice and camaraderie. And the really last one I wanted to mention is The Old Man and the Sea. This might be his most famous work. I mean, when I think of Hemingway, I think of For Whom the Bell Tolls. But to others, this might be his most prominent because The Old Man and the Sea is a novella that tells the story of an aging fisherman whose battle with a giant marlin. And it also won a Pulitzer Prize and helped him secure the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954. Okay, I guess we can go to the next slide, which talks about some of the different themes in Hemingway's work. The two I want to really focus on, or three I really want to focus on, is war. And obviously we mentioned previously in the last slide that A Farewell to Arms and From Whom the Bell Tolls, they don't exactly romanticize war, which some novels like doing. Instead, he took his experience of what happened in both Spain and in Italy, and what he was able to do was kind of craft those into telling the different stories and different experiences, how chaos and tragedy eventually unfold in those trying times. Love and loss are also a big component that Hemingway really kind of puts in his work a lot. And they sometimes have complicated external circumstances in a lot of stories. He does this to show how love can provide solace, yet can lead to heartbreak at the same time. So it's almost a balancing act with love and loss during his stories. And the last thing I really want to touch on is existentialism. And I want to touch on this because in a lot of his novels, Hemingway's characters often face existential struggles, questioning the purpose of life and finding meaning in personal courage and perseverance. And yeah, I guess we can go on to the next slide, which is about influence. And I wanted to really quick mention two people that have really been influenced by Hemingway's works. The first would be Raymond Carver. So I know we talked a little bit about minimalism. So Raymond Carver actually uses a term called dirty minimalism, or being a dirty minimalist. And I know that may sound misleading, but it's a term that means when we're using minimalism, it's not exactly overt because you're still using minimalist values and minimalist storytelling. However, you are implying that characters are trying to go through a lot of different struggles during this time. And they're usually depicted as working class characters who deal with addiction, failed relationships. And this is something that Carver kind of took this dirty minimalist mindset and included into a lot of his stories. And it kind of is shown a lot in especially works from Hemingway, especially From Whom the Bell Tolls, that this dirty minimalist kind of view is how Carver is trying to connect it. And both of the writers, like Hemingway and Carver, have explored the lives of ordinary people who are emotionally charged and restrained narratives. The other one I wanted to talk about quickly was Joan Didion. So her connection to Hemingway is more about observational precision. She's spoken in interviews before about how she admired Hemingway's clarity and his unflinching honesty. And she cited many different times that Hemingway was a stylistic role model for her in her life and in her early career. And in a lot of her stories, such as In Slouching Towards Bethlehem, you can see a lot of the similarities in terms of journalistic tone and ability to observe everything through a new, different, minimalist light. And yeah, so that's pretty much the bulk of it. And you've all made it to the conclusion. So I'm sorry if I've bored everybody to tears by now. But in summation, I just wanted to talk about Ernest Hemingway because he was, in my opinion, he was more than just an author, and I think to a lot of people who really were looking forward to this exhibition, he was not only just somebody who was well known throughout the 20th century literature, but he was really a chronicler of the human spirit. He captured joys, sorrows, love, loss, life with unmatched clarity. His works continue to inspire not just writers, but also artists, filmmakers, and creators across all disciplines. And as you're here tonight with the exhibition, I just wanted to really just close out by saying, I hope that the exhibition really highlights his legacy and how he's transcended from the physical page to different mediums and has a new voice now in storytelling. And yeah, thank you so much, and I'll be here if anybody has any questions. How are you?
Here. Oh, this is, yeah. So we're actually going to do questions at the end after everyone is done speaking, but I would like to introduce the next speaker. His name is Glenn Whitmore. He has worked as a colorist for 35 years on DC Comics and Archie Comics, as well as some other comics as well, but he'll tell you more about that. So please welcome Glenn Whitmore.
Well, thank you all, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. When I put together my talk here, I was scratching my head to figure out what to talk about, and the question I ask myself quite often as I get up in the morning drinking my coffee is, why comics? And it's sort of asking like a fish, like, why water, you know, just, you know. So anyway, that's what my talk is titled. So, I don't know how many fans of the Marvel movies or the superhero movies we have out there, but you know, you go to them and like Marvel especially had this thing where they put a tag at the very end and you'd have to sit through the credits and like this big long thing, a list of people, thousands of people. And it occurred to me, it was just like, when I got into this as a passion, it only required a handful of people to make that same magic. And so anyway, if you've seen those comic book movies, if you know the experience of staying in the theater and waiting for that tag teaser scene, you've seen those thousands of names scroll by. And but you probably don't remember many of them, many of the names. It's just kind of like a big blur. But in order to complete that movie, you've paid your hard-earned money for what took the hard work and the long hours to make that movie. Comic book movies rely on all those people in order to laboring hard work, years and years just to make that one movie. And people rush to the theater and they see it and they enjoy it. But when it comes to the source material, that these blockbusters were based on, it only took a small handful of professionals to create that magic, and you could often just count them on one hand. You know, you got your penciler, your inker, your colorist, your letterer, your writer, and then the editor. Well, okay, almost one hand, but so with these limited resources, and at the time when I got into comics were just flat colors on newsprint. It was very simple, very minimalistic, you know, and you had to be in order to produce on a regular basis. And it's amazing how much great work came out of those old comics on the newsprint. And I look at my Facebook feed all the time, and I get all these comic-related posts and people posting panels, and you know, it's just amazing how people still connect with those old comics, as slick and as polished as the new comics are. People still love those old comics and those creators who made those old comics, and that's sort of what the magic that kind of drew me in. So with limited resources and technology, these skilled professionals were able to work with the limitations and create stories that were powerful and memorable. And to this day, my Facebook feed is still filled with them. These classic characters, these classic storylines. But such is the appeal of making comics is that it takes such little in the way of art supplies, pencils, erasers, Bristol board, brush pens, a few triangles or circle templates. All these are available readily and cheaply. And you could just take a trip down to Michael's or even Staples, and they have all this stuff, and you can just begin. You can go home. You don't even need the drafting board. You could sit at your, you could sit at your kitchen table and make them. And even if you don't own a drawing board, that's okay. There's a very famous artist, Alex Toth, who worked at a kitchen table, and he just had like a little board propped up, and that's how he would draw. So, why comics? And the short answer that I came up with is that you have a story that relies on visuals, and it needs to be told. The need to tell a story has been around since Adam. So has been the need to experience those stories, to watch them, to listen to them. It's been around for centuries. I began making stories at a very young age when my mother set me up at our kitchen table, there's the kitchen table again, with a stack of typing paper and one of those 4-colored pens. And I was very young, I was like 4 or 5 years old. And it's very likely she did this, not because she recognized some sort of innate, brilliant talent. It was just that I was a hyperactive kid, and she just wanted me to calm down. So that's, toss out your Ritalin, just give him a piece of paper and a pen. So anyway, and I stuck with it. And about at age 10, I was enrolled in Saturday sketch classes at the Kubert School. And we have somebody associated with the Kubert School here today who will later address you. And I promise you, his presentation will top mine. So anyway, and at that very first lesson, Saturday lesson, it was December 1976. So it was about 48 years ago. It was 48 years ago to this month. Joe Kubert himself taught the lesson, and he taught how to construct a head, where the eyes were placed on the skull and the nose and the mouth, and all of a sudden the magic. I've been reading comics for all those years and maybe trying to draw them, with the 4-colored pen, but this was my doorway and entryway into a lifelong passion. I kid you not, that morning I probably had fantasies of growing up to be an astronaut or a baseball player, maybe even president of the United States. But when I left that lesson, I wanted to be a comic book professional. I knew it. I knew it then. There was no question about it. Let's see, where am I in my speech here? So then I went to the Saturday class, you know, on a regular basis. I met a lot of great guys there. Joe Kubert himself taught. I met some of the older alumni that would teach. And they nurtured in me the love of drawing. And then I graduated high school. I went to the school full time for 3 years. It's a 3-year program. I believe it's still a 3-year program. And upon leaving, I was able to find work as a comic book colorist. I was blessed to have fulfilled the dream, both as a colorist for several major publishers, and to self-publish my own retro sci-fi superhero Captain Clockwork, which later on, after all the questions and everything, you'll see if you haven't passed by the table out there already. So I created this comic because I wanted to publish a comic that summed up my point of view and explored my interest in history. So for me, that's why comics. For you, you have your own personal interests and your points of view. And I wouldn't say that self-publishing is the way to go to do, and I would say that self-publishing is the way to go to do just that. And with crowdfunding platforms such as Kickstarter and Indiegogo, I did Kickstarter for my book, it's never been easier. And you don't need to be ambitious and publish the great American novel. You don't need to be another Hemingway. I would just advise you to tell some short stories. 6 pages is plenty. Make 4 6-pagers and you've got 24 pages and you've got yourself a comic book. You know, go down to Staples, copy it up, and sell it to your friends. I mean, it's a great way to start. You get the feedback from your friends, and all the while, as you're putting the stories together, you improve. And this is for people who aren't near the Kubert School. I'm not saying don't go to the school. You know. It's online too, and that's the beauty of the Kubert School today, is that, I'll give another free plug, is that you can kind of break it down. You can do several weeks focusing on one aspect of it and then move on and then move on and move on. And if that works for you remotely on your own time in your own space, you can do that. And so anyway, I would advise, as you're pursuing this, just continue to study figure drawing, storytelling, page designs, and every facet possible that makes a great comic. There are plenty of good books dedicated to the craft of comics, and one book series I hardly recommend is the DC Comics Guide series on writing, penciling, inking, coloring, lettering. They got different books for all the different disciplines. And your artistic ambitions may not take you to the big publishers, but the book series has rock solid advice on what comic book editors look for when reviewing your portfolio. And one caveat I would offer is that while self-publishing may be artistically satisfying, it likely won't pay the bills. Likely won't pay the bills. You may get, But I'm fortunate enough to be a colorist in 4 major comic book publishers, and that goes a long way to pay the bills and put food on the table. And in this regard, the practice of my skill is in support of somebody else's vision, a publisher's vision. So when I'm doing Captain Clockwork, it's my own vision. I get to control it. No one has any say in it. But that comes with the responsibility of actually doing a good comic and trying to connect with the audience. It's the same the way a publisher thinks. But both are legit. Both paths are legit, and it's just one supports the other. So my advice, if you're interested in taking this journey, is to go home and make some time and create some 6-page stories, short goals. You know, you don't have to come up with a great American novel. Make 4 or more of them, put them together, and sell them. Never stop practicing the skills you need to tell your stories clearly and effectively, because your stories are important and you want them to be told as well. Whether you chose to begin this comic journey or you've already begun, I wish the best for you. And that's the end of what I've written down. Again, I keep praising the school. My drawing skills weren't exactly up to par when I graduated, but the school provided an entryway into the business for me, because my very first job as a colorist was coloring local comic strips for a newspaper. And they were hiring students part-time out of the school. And one of the very first things I learned was the 3 primary colors are not red, yellow, and blue. They're yellow, magenta. I'm getting the watch time. Yellow, magenta, and cyan. So I'm forever grateful for the school, and I will step out of the way and you'll get a really informative talk from Mr. Anthony here at the Kean School. Thank you for your time and attention.
Glenn kind of spoiled it, but his name's Anthony. So we have Anthony Marquez coming up, and Marquez? All right, well, he'll probably say his name again. But he started out as an editor with DC Comics, and then worked on comics such as Superman, Batman, and the Ghostbusters. He'll tell you a little bit more about his process and everything right now, so please give him a warm welcome.
Hi everybody, how are we all doing tonight? I prepared a few words, so I'll go through that first, and then afterwards I'm going to do a short demo. I'll try to keep it quick, especially if we're short on time. I'll fly through it though, so don't worry. That wasn't a Superman joke, by the way. But good evening everybody, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you tonight. Not just as someone who has been able to live their dream, but as a testament to what can happen if you push past your fears, embrace your passions, and never let go of your dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem. Comic books are more than just picture pages filled with brightly colored heroes and villains. They are gateways to limitless possibilities. As creators, we hold the unique ability to shape entire worlds, to tell stories that stretch our imagination. From the most colorful superheroes to the darkest, most intricate narratives, the comic book world offers endless opportunity for expression, creativity, and exploration. To steal a line from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. What we create has the potential to inspire, to uplift, and to make an impact on the lives of others. How many times have we seen stories in the news about a child facing illness, with their last wish being to meet Spider-Man, Batman, or even Captain America? These characters, our characters, become more than just fictional beings. They become symbols of hope, courage, and strength in the real world. They are reminders that no matter how hard life gets, there's always the possibility of rising up, fighting for what's right, and making a difference. As artists, we wield a power that is greater than we often realize. The worlds we create, the characters that we bring to life, and the stories we tell can touch lives in ways we can't even fully comprehend. Don't think small when it comes to the impact that you can have. Your art has the ability to inspire and to bring joy to those who need it most, and to bring about change in ways that transcend the page. The possibilities are endless, and so is your potential. As a young boy, I'm kind of starting to get old now. As a young boy, I remember being introduced to superheroes, watching Superman the movie with Christopher Reeve, Batman with Michael Keaton, and we would visit our local video rental store, not many of those around these days, which had a bunch of comics all over the wall. It just so happened that there was a very small event, Glenn, I think you would know about this, a very small event going on at that time called the Death of Superman. That's sarcasm, by the way. For those of you that don't know, the Death of Superman was huge. It also landed on a day where there was nothing going on in the news, and this was the news. It was covered on every channel. You have to remember, back then, that comics weren't as accepted as they are today. So this was a big deal. But for me, as a kid, selfishly, all I could think about was, how could they kill Superman? My favorite character. I needed to know, and boy was I hooked. The artwork by Dan Jurgens, my favorite then and still all-time favorite Superman artist, locked me in. I swear it was like a firework going off in my head. I knew what I wanted to do immediately, and that was that I wanted to draw comics. I immediately started drawing my own stories, creating characters, and reading everything I could get my hands on. This went on all the way until I graduated from high school, and then something weird happened. I was suddenly scared to pick up a pencil. I always knew that I wanted to draw, but I was worried to pursue it as a career. Always hearing about the starving artist, or just worrying about having to draw what other people wanted me to. I just wanted to draw what I wanted to make sure that it always stayed fun, maybe just a hobby. And so, instead of pursuing what was in my heart, I chose a path I thought would bring security and normalcy. So, I went into construction work. Now, don't get me wrong, construction is good, honest work, but for me, it wasn't where I was meant to be. The work didn't really inspire me, but do you know what did? Drawing still. I would sketch on every scrap of paper I could find, and even on the walls of the job site. That wasn't a great way to make everyone happy. It was around that time that something really incredible happened. I met an incredible person named Jackie, and she was the first person who truly believed in me outside of my mom and dad. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. She saw the artist that I had buried deep inside. I'll never forget the night I came home from work, and I went upstairs, and I found that she had built a drawing desk for me. And this was her way of telling me that you could do this. That desk became my spot that I was anchored to. It was where I started drawing every day and every night, relentlessly pushing through every moment of doubt. It was around that time that I decided to take another big leap and apply to the Joe Kubert School. And you know, it wasn't just any art school. This was a place where legends were made, a school that had trained some of the greatest comic book artists in history. Founded by Joe Kubert, who was one of the most influential figures in the comic book world, the Kubert School became my dream destination. The history of the school is rich with creativity, passion, and excellence. Joe Kubert himself started from nothing, from a young artist drawing comics on the streets of New York, and he created a school that nurtured and brought out the very best in artists. His vision of providing a training ground, or as we like to call it, the artist boot camp, to aspiring artists inspired generations, and I was determined to be a part of that. And so I worked hard. I wasn't just going to show up to the school and hope for the best. I needed to find a way to fund my education, so I worked as a bartender at a bowling alley to raise the money to pay for school. I really did. Some nights were really good, other nights, horrible. Then, you know what? I kept drawing every day, every night, every chance I got. And then one day I got the letter that changed everything. I was accepted. At the Joe Kubert School, I learned more than just techniques. I learned the power of perseverance. I learned that dreams don't come true by accident. They're earned through hard work, sacrifice, and passion. And from there, the journey only grew. While a student at the school, I received my first opportunities to do professional work drawing backgrounds for Joe Kubert himself, for a magazine called PS Magazine, which was created for the US Army. The feeling of having my first paid job and contributing to a project like that was a pivotal moment for me. It proved that I could get a job and that I could actually draw for a living, but it was only the beginning. After graduation, I was hired as an assistant editor at DC Comics, where I worked for a few years. And then when DC made the decision to move to California, I knew that wasn't the right fit for me. And so I took another leap. I began freelancing as an artist, and I started working on comics like Red Sonja, Doc Savage, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, James Bond, John Wick. And it was around this time that I also acquired Dewey's Comic City in Madison, New Jersey, a long-running comic shop that had been a part of the community for decades. I now have the honor of not just being a freelance artist, but also a business owner, supporting other artists and creators in the comic book community. My freelance career was finally starting to take off, but I wasn't done yet. One day, I heard that the Joe Kubert School was for sale. Without hesitation, I reached out to my good friend Andy Kubert, and I expressed my interest in taking over the school. And against all odds, it became a reality. My wife Jackie and I worked tirelessly, pouring our hearts and souls into ensuring that the school remained true to Joe's original vision, while also updating the program to make sure students received the most up-to-date education in cartooning and narrative art. Looking back, I can hardly believe the journey I've had. I've drawn Batman and Robin, I've drawn Superman, I've drawn the heroes and villains that I grew up with, characters I loved and cared for. What started as a dream of a little kid reading The Death of Superman and watching Saturday morning cartoons has become my day-to-day reality. And you know what? That old drawing desk that Jackie built for me, sorry, got a little emotional for a second. Now nearly 20 years later, I, along with our two little artists, our children, Avery and Liam, we still use it. So every line I draw, every story I tell, I owe a part of it to that desk and her belief that I could do this. Jackie and I have done this together, through it all. She has been my constant source of encouragement, my rock. She's a brilliant, beautiful, and the bravest person I know. She never gave up on me, and together we've created something that is bigger than either of us. And that, my friends, is the heart of it all. Don't ever let anyone tell you that your dreams are too big or too far out of reach. The only thing that stands between you and your dreams is your own willingness to keep going, no matter what. You can achieve what you set your mind to, but you have to believe in yourself, and you have to be willing to put in the work. Before I close, I want to leave you with a quote from what I found to be fitting, since we're here at the Ernest Hemingway and Comics exhibit. Hemingway once said, "There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed." For all of us in creative fields, chasing our dreams, that quote rings true. The journey isn't easy. It requires sacrifice. Sometimes it can be heartbreaking even, but if you stay true to your heart and if you keep working at it, it will be worth it. And when you look back, you'll realize that all of it, every struggle, every challenge, every failure, was a part of your success. So remember, stay focused on your dreams no matter the obstacles that present themselves. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, because you absolutely can. If I can do it, you can do it. And if you ever doubt yourself, just think of that drawing desk and the belief of the people who love you. All right, so how many artists do we have sitting out here? Let me see, give me a little show of hands. All right, we got 2 artists. We got 3, 4, all right, we got enough. So what I thought would be nice is we would just take a moment, and I thought I would draw for you guys, if that's all right. And I'll try to make it as fast as possible, right? Oh, yep, just swinging the arm around, getting... So what we're gonna do, Jordan, where are you at? You got that? All right. So we came in earlier and we were trying to figure out how to pull this off. So icons at times, we use all sorts of different things. And then when I fill in large black areas, I love to use these Faber-Castell's pit pens. These are like the nuclear option. You just bring them in and you just fill in whatever large black areas you need to. All right. Since I'm not exactly sure if we can get on the camera, so you guys let me know if you can see it, and if not, I'm sorry, but when I start inking, you'll be able to see it a lot better. So when I draw, I like to just start off with basic shapes. okay? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna start working on a profile image of Superman, because Superman's my favorite character, and that's what I want to draw right now. So, one of the things, especially, when you're a kid, you really latch on to certain things. And Superman was a character that I really latched onto as a kid. There's a lot of good stuff there that really resonated with me when I was younger and never let that go. So what I'm doing right now, if you can't see, is I'm starting to just place in some guideline areas of where I want the head to be. Like I said to you before, it's going to be a profile shot. So what I did was I run a line straight down. We put in a basic circle just to get the initial shape kind of going on so I can start doing my placements. And then I start breaking it down. Now, a lot of times you're going to see folks that'll come in and they'll do all the different guidelines and whatnot. And that's a great thing to do, but since we don't have a lot of time, and I don't want to bore you all out of your minds, I thought that the best way of doing this is, let's just get straight to it. There's nothing wrong with that either. I try to tell people all the time, don't worry so much when you're drawing. Just have fun. Pick up a pencil and move it on the page. If you can do that, it's half the battle. The other big thing that always comes up is, as an instructor at the school as well, we deal with students and deadlines. A big part of being a professional is being able to hit your deadlines, and that's something that we stress at the school. And the biggest thing that slows people down is the pursuit of perfection. Now, it's very important for you to realize that no drawing or painting, sculpture, anything that you do is ever going to be perfect. Don't worry about perfection, okay? Every drawing that you do, every piece that you do as you go forward, you will continue to get better. So don't stress out about today, because tomorrow's gonna be even better, all right? Just keep going. So from this point, I'm just gonna bring this down. I like to give him little squinty eyes. I like squinty Superman. One upper eyelid, a bit underneath. And I know you want to do questions afterwards, but I love interacting with people. So I would say if anybody has any questions as I'm doing this, please just yell. Yell at me, okay? It's all right. I have 2 little kids at home and they yell at me all the time, so just, shoot stuff my way and I'll do my best to answer it, okay? So his nose is a little bit too long, it's bothering me. Over the summer, I got to travel out to Australia. And I went down to Melbourne, and I did a show out there, and it was fantastic. Have any of you ever gone to New York Comic Con? Anybody gone to New York Comic Con in here? Oh, what did you think?
Great.
It was great? It's crazy packed, right? So now that's what these shows are like in Australia, because they have like 3 major shows, and so everybody floods to them as soon as they can get a chance. And it's nuts, but when I was there, they let us stay an extra day, and they brought us out on this bus, like, I don't know how far out into the middle of Australia, and we went to this guy's house, and he literally had a koala in his kitchen, and he was bringing in kangaroos. It was incredible. But the cool part about it was Brandon Routh was there, and Brandon Routh played as Superman in the movie Superman Returns. And he was the nicest guy ever, so I got to hang out with Superman all day, and it was so much fun. I loved it. But while we went out to breakfast, and I drew a picture of Superman, and he was like looking over my shoulder while I was drawing it. I was like, Superman's watching me draw Superman. This is so weird. But it was great. I was such a dork about it, and I think that that's really the key of this all as well, is stay the dork. Be the dork, okay? Keep that childlike wonder and don't ever let that go, because the moment that you do, it's over. And then you gotta figure out something else. But stay fun and enjoy what it is that you do, okay? For me, look, I make no qualms about it. Drawing is very difficult. It eats up a lot of time. I will tell you, I've missed I don't know how many family events, different things, because you gotta hit deadlines, but I do it because I love it, and I have a very understanding family, and I appreciate them very much because of it. But if this is something that you love doing, then you have to do it. It's not a matter of wanting to do it, it's something that you're gonna have to do. So, do it. You know, I tell them don't read, no, I'm just joking. They like comics, they do, but so my daughter really loves the Raina Telgemeier books. If anybody's not familiar with those, I would highly recommend picking up, there's Drama, there's Guts, there's, oh my god, but she has so many really good ones. And then she also does the Babysitter's Club books, which are really, really good. I highly recommend those to you. And then my son is addicted to Sonic the Hedgehog. And I hate Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm sure, yeah, you know, it's a lot of fun. But he loves Sonic and he loves superheroes, and we all get together and we draw together, we have so much fun doing it. But one of the really fun things that we did was I like to draw them into the books that I do. So in any of the stories, there's pages of all of us together walking in a background as Superman is flying away, or Batman saves us in issue 7 of one of the books that we did. We had these ninjas were blowing up a giant gas tank on the back of a truck. And so Batman jumps in and stops the ninjas from blowing me and my family up, which was very kind of him. So, all right, just kind of piece this in here. So what I'm doing right now is, because for the sake of time, I'm trying not to worry you guys too much. I just want to move this quick. Just try to drop in some basic guidelines. Okay, you can kind of see it up there. Hold up. Now is when the good stuff happens. All right. So, again, we're using the brush. We're gonna break that in. And so when I ink, I make a lot of very strange faces, so I apologize. If my tongue flies out of my face, it's just the way it happens. It's kind of like when Michael Jordan used to play, not that I'm comparing myself to Michael Jordan. But you know, when you ever see those videos of him playing, he'd be running and his tongue sticking out of his face, out of his mouth, hanging out there. When I concentrate, my tongue falls out. Like one of those ugly dog winners every year. You ever see those? Anybody know what I'm talking about? It's okay if not. So right now, all I'm doing is I'm just going through. I'm going to drop this in. I'm playing with negative areas as well, because I want the white sections to kind of interact with the reader or the viewer with what we're doing here. So what happens, and it's very cool, and it happens on every single page, and kind of what you were talking about before about minimalist and kind of allowing the reader to participate in what's happening in the story. As a comic artist, we have to do that on every single page because we deal with things called gutters. Now, do you guys know what the gutters are on a page? You know those little white sections in between the panels that separate it? That's where the magic happens, okay? And that's where you get to really interact in a way that you probably aren't even aware. But there's action that happens in that gutter, and your brain connects those panels together and fills in that space. Those gutters are some of the most important things that you have on the page, and understanding how to pace out the page correctly and utilizing those gutters to your benefit, not only for the artist but for the reader, is key. So that was a really nice thing that I really enjoyed what you were talking about before, because I was like, that's great, because that really ties into what we do. I mean, I don't want to go on any ledge, but I would say that there's something there. Yeah, I think that there's something similar to it. I'll have to do a little bit more homework on that. I'll get back to you. So really all I do is I just kind of work. You know, and there's a lot of different things that go on when you're inking too. You know, I'm worrying about thin to thick lines. I'm trying to keep a constant amount of pressure when I'm having to pull other areas. You know, because you don't want to just have extremely thick lines slop down on the page all over, everywhere. You know, that kind of would ruin the delicateness that you can get by playing with a pen and ink. You know, I will say that's my one big gripe about digital pens and brushes. Not that they're not getting close, but it's repetitive. And, you know, we get asked a lot about style at the school. So if anybody wants this, at the end I'll do what one of my instructors at the school used to do, and he would say, trivia. And I'll ask you guys a question. I won't say it yet, but if you can guess it, you can have it. And if nobody gets it right, well, Cicely, you get it, okay?
Oh my, this is the first time I wish everyone lost. So that I can win.
So,
She's so competitive.
yeah, you know, going to shows, and I have to travel a lot. And I have some really fun shows coming up this year. But for many years, I would go all over the U.S., and I would go and talk about comics, and I would do demos and talk about what I like. And I still enjoy doing that, but there's so much of the world that I want to see. And with my kids starting to get older, if I travel to shows, I want to go to places that are unique or that I can bring them to. So the point of this is to say that because I draw comics, and I've done all these things that I've enjoyed doing since I was a little kid, I get to travel all over the world now. So I just talked about, I got to go to Australia. Upcoming, I have Ireland, then I go to Belgium the following month. I'm going all over the US again. I'll be in New Orleans, I go to Canada. No, it's just, it opens so many doors, but you gotta believe in it, and if you do, you can reap the benefits of it as well. And don't be afraid to tell people that this is what you want to do. I get asked a lot, how do you break into comics? Well, you have to let people know that you want to do them. So at the Cuba School we do, and I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to talk about the school this much, you just let me know, okay? But what we do is we bring in about 10 to 15 different editors from different companies, and they review the students' work. And they review the students' work in the hopes that they get hired. But during our time at the school, what we've done is we've actually started the Joe Kubert School Art Agency, and we have a few different things that we do. So we do a lot of the production work actually for DC Comics. So we handle a lot of their webtoons, books, and different materials like that. So this way our students are able to start getting paid work while they're at the school. We also have the job placement coordinators. We've got all sorts of things set up to be able to give them opportunities to start working. Because that was very, very important to my wife and I when we took over the school, was that we wanted the students to have the opportunities to make an actual career out of this, and to make this into something that can sustain them for the rest of their lives. As somebody that went to the school and dealt with coming out and being lucky enough to get a job right away, I wanted to make sure that other people had the same opportunities that I did. So we've been pushing very hard for that. Let me grab the mic, Ron, because it'll move quicker. So this is a size 10. You'll see a bunch of different sizes when people work with them. It's a little bit thicker. This is not a good mic, though. Yeah, myself for bringing that one. All right, this is size 12 that I work with. Also, if you ink traditionally, make sure you keep your coffee cup away. You don't want to dip your brush into your coffee, because I promise that if you're working on a deadline, you're still going to drink that coffee. All right. Clouds. Subtle texture. We have a pretty good little sketch of Superman. All right. Trivia. What year did Superman come out? Ooh, it wasn't anything recent. Don't anybody tell me 1991. You got it. You win. Come on up, you get to take it. So you got, Natalie's gonna see you. Give her a round of applause. Good job. That was great. Do you know what month? It's all, that's all right. Here.
December.
You know what? You're wrong, but it's okay. No problem. Thanks so much. All right, but I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that put on this event tonight. You guys did such a wonderful job, and all the speakers. I thought you guys did such a wonderful job at this as well. So I'm just going to hand this on over to you or Cicely, whoever wants to come up. Thanks again, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right. Oh man, what a wonderful evening. A special thank you to Nicholas as well as Glenn and Anthony. One thing that I do love about art is my background is in theater. So, you know, I come from art to art in a different way, more from stage managing. I have my a theater company. But one thing that I gathered from each person's experience and what they do, including Nick with history, is the connection that art provides for us, and that ability to get in touch with our feelings. Is that all right? Art makes us feel. And that's one thing that I want to say. And so a special thank you to our speakers on this evening. What are we looking at? Everyone's looking. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nick, for providing, and thank you. We want to continue this evening. We are winding down, but we have our curator here who curated the exhibition, and she will be available in the gallery for Q&A as well as our speakers. And you can ask questions there as you go around. We also have Glenn has provided us with some comic books as well as paraphernalia for you to view, as well as information that he's able to provide. Our hats off to you. The Kubert School, I'm not mad at it. I just want to tell, I want you to keep saying it as much as you want, because I want to just tell you how we got to you. Mary Claire is also an artist, and she had a friend, Doug. And Doug, yeah, so Doug, Doug was like, I can't do it, but I want to introduce you to the Kubert School. And I was like, okay. And that's how we got there. So Doug is also an alum of Kean. So I like to talk about Kean University. No, I won't do it, but I'm an alum. Mary Claire is an alum. Lauren is an alum. So Kean, Nick is an alum. Professor Edley is an alum. So we have some great things at Kean University. All of the workers that you see here are from Kean University. So we understand the passion that you have. No, we really don't. You're ahead of us. Yes. And that's what makes the community. Art makes the community. Art keeps us together. Art connects people that would never be connected. And that's the joy of what we do here at the galleries at Kean. We like to bring people together. We like to connect with each other. We really do like each other. We're not just smiling and laughing for likes and for you to see that, but we do. Art really gives us a sense of peace. And I always call the galleries our little piece of peace. If you're having a bad day, come to the gallery, sit for a while, let your imagination go wild. So we thank you for coming, and we're going to continue this evening in the gallery with our curator, Mary Claire. She'll be there with answers and information that you would need to know. Thank you all so much on behalf of the galleries at Kean, President, Recolette, and everybody that supports the galleries. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful evening.